it's time that things change around here, and I don't like talking about it too much, but
Right.
that's one of the first steps. 14 straight is unacceptable. That's unacceptable. Um, I'm 0-2 against them. That's unacceptable. I
Mhm.
inherited. I walked into a team that we haven't beat the Patriots, and I feel like that's why they brought me here and brought me and Sauce here and the guys here to make things like that change. So it's time that we do what we get paid for.
All right, so Garrett Wilson's talking about trying to find a way to win a game against Bill Belichick here with the quarterback, Zach Wilson. I think one could make a pretty compelling case that on some level the season is on the line for both these teams. Sure. It feels like a monster game. If the Patriots are going to have a season this year, they can't fall to 0-3, 0-2 in the division. They've got to beat Zach Wilson. And same on the other side, Dan. I think if the Jets are going to have a season this year, win the 9 or 10 games and get into the playoffs that some are hoping they can, home against New England is one of those they have to win. Show me the tape. What does Zach need to do?
Well, he needs his offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett, to change the picture a little bit, use a little bit more motion. Now, everyone's going to say, well, they're going to take Garrett Wilson away. Yeah, no, duh. Don't let them. So this is Garrett Wilson essentially in the slot. Use motion inside out like the Dolphins did to get a Garrett Wilson or a Breece Hall the ball. And I want it from the slot inside. Get this defense running horizontally with that motion and just get those guys the football. 46 snaps last week for the Jets. Those two had 6 touches combined. Not okay. Second thing, use Garrett Wilson as a decoy. Everyone's going to pay attention to him. Use him in some of these motions where your second level is following him, and then utilize Breece Hall getting carries and then offensive line trying to push against a New England defensive line. The last thing is this. Again, motion with the run. And when I say the run, I think that the Jets need to run between the guard, center, and guard, just like Miami does. Motion from one side, across to the other side, force that defense to horizontally expand. Last week, when Miami ran the football with motion, in between the guards, they ran ball for 9 yards a carry. Now, this is not the Cleveland Browns with Nick Chubb. Hopefully he gets healthy, a dominant run game. This was the Dolphins. The Jets absolutely can do it. So it's not just, hey, Zach Wilson has to do this. They had an offense that was built for Aaron, and it wasn't going to be a ton of motion. They got to change the picture for Zach and try to utilize some of that to help him and their offense perform a little bit better. And the last thing I'm going to say is this. Stop telling me that they're going to take Garrett Wilson away. You guys get paid too. Get Garrett Wilson the football. It's not that hard.
It's a really good point. No, that's really well said. And again, to be clear, in case it wasn't to the audience, that's New England they were playing against. So that's the same defense the Jets are going to see this weekend that Miami just did that to. Here's where, to me, it's a little different from Nathaniel Hackett versus Luke Getsy. The conversation we just had. The Bears had an entire offseason to plan with Justin Fields and have built the plan around their quarterback, and it looks awful. You tell me, D, what is an offensive player? When you spend an entire offseason planning around having one quarterback, and now all of a sudden 4 plays in, you have to scrap all of that. How quickly can you do what Dan is talking about? Because to your point, they want to do things completely differently than what they spent their entire offseason planning. How quickly can you start making those substantial changes?
I think you can make it pretty quickly because they've been looking at Zach Wilson all offseason. They've looked at the things that he does well, the things he doesn't well, and also you got to have the communication between the play caller and the quarterback to see, okay, what are you comfortable with? What are the concepts of plays that you're really comfortable with? And then you incorporate those things. Also, I will say this. Last year, when they played New England twice, they didn't have Breece Hall. Breece Hall is a big part of he's another dynamic piece that's going to be a part of this offense. So you got to take all that into account. But Dan's right. Like, Garrett Wilson is too good of a player where you just got to be like, oh, well, he's just not,
Coach,
Bill Belichick is going to X him out of the game. No, you got to scheme him ways to get him the ball. Yeah. Because we saw against Dallas, what happened? Like, boom, one play to the house. He's too good to be an afterthought.
Kmart, you have about as good a finger on the pulse of that building, of that locker room as anybody does. What is your sense of where they are as they get set for a game that, again, I'll say, I think their season will go a long way based upon what they do this weekend?
Oh, no, I think this game will determine their season emotionally and mentally. Because I think, to Garrett Wilson's point, that's why him and Sauce are here. Breece, like, they all have that alpha dog mentality. They don't care about the same old Jets, but they understand that the quarterback, like, this is a perfect opportunity for Zach Wilson. I know it's Bill Belichick, but for Zach Wilson to quiet all the Kirk Cousins talk, to quiet all the doubters and the naysayers, and still you go into this game not knowing if Zach Wilson is up to the challenge. I hope he is for the sake of this team, because this team is too good defensively and they have too many good young players who come into this game with confidence. And to walk into a stadium and say, I hope he's got the right mindset. That's why it's so important for the coaches to put the kid in a position where he can be successful early on. Those first 15, let him get comfortable, get some easy shots so he can build that confidence.
Greeny, I said this last week on radio. When the Jets knew that Aaron Rodgers was no longer going to be a part of that team this year from a playing perspective, Nathaniel Hackett couldn't go home. He had to sleep at that facility. And what D.O. is talking about, creativity. Right? How can you gain an edge over these elite defenses that you're playing? One of the ways that we talk about Sean McVay and Cooper Kupp. How's Cooper Kupp always getting the football if everybody
knows that he's getting the football? Yeah.
It's creativity. It's moving them around, putting them in different spots. You having that motion, and what motion does, it gives that defense one more thing to think about in the blink of an eye right before the ball is being snapped.
But isn't it remarkable that Cooper Kupp became Cooper Kupp when all of a sudden Matt Stafford was his quarterback? I mean, not that he wasn't already a good player, but what we're talking about, the explosion of Cooper Kupp.
He was Cooper Kupp before Matt Stafford.
I understand that, but I mean, he wasn't the Super Bowl MVP before. You know, he wasn't. We didn't start. Sure. We weren't saying Cooper Kupp is the best receiver in football until all of a sudden he had a great quarterback like Stafford, or at least a quarterback who could throw people open. The mentality changing has got to be hard, to the point that Kmart is making. Like, Garrett Wilson went into the season thinking, I'm going to be the offensive player of the year. I'm going to give 100 catches. I'm going to become a superstar.
Right.
Breece Hall is thinking his things. Sauce Gardner is thinking Super Bowl rings. That's going to be, it has to be, I'm concerned about the psychological piece of this.
Make it sound like this is a simplistic thing. I understand coaching in the NFL is incredibly difficult. But when you have a player like that and a player like Breece Hall, and you asked Woody how hard it is, Greeny, we call it window dressing for a reason. It's not that hard to change the window at a storefront. It takes 20 minutes, and then you change it.
Okay. It's not, but Greeny's not talking about these kids being weak-minded. It is a different shift in, they're coming in knowing, like, I'm Sauce Gardner, I'm Garrett Wilson. But they can't win the game alone. When you don't know what your quarterback will give you on any given Sunday.
I guarantee you, Garrett Wilson thinks, you throw me the ball 15 times, we will win.
No, I get that. I get Garrett is confident. But it is, again, being around this team for a long time, I have seen the different quarterbacks come in through here.
Here's the mindset offensively, though, like you have to have now. Everything's not going to be perfect with Zach Wilson. So what you say to yourself is that, okay, when the ball does come to me, no matter what the circumstances are, I got to make the play regardless.
D-Wood, final word.
I can guarantee you right now, just being around that organization, those players, they still think everything is in front of them.
Right.
Everything is attainable.
They're too young to know better.
Even with Zach, everything is attainable.
Dak is getting it called in the huddle, and they are standing there with 20 seconds left on the play clock. So it feels to me like they're utilizing what is Dak's greatest strength. He may not have some of the abilities that some of the other top quarterbacks do, but his ability to dissect the defense, get in the right play, and make the right decisions like you're talking about, that's his strength, and I feel like it's accentuated by how quickly those plays are being called.
It is in the first 2 weeks. Two reasons why it's happening. Number one, trust, and number two, efficiency. So Mike McCarthy calls a 1st and 10 play. He has absolute trust that Dak Prescott knows why I'm calling this. Hey, what's the reason why we're calling this play? What's the intent of this play call? And then Dak is then operating in extreme efficiency. So Mike McCarthy calls that 1st down and 10 play. Dak's going to do the right thing with the football. Okay, the defense is in cover 3. We're going to throw the slant route. All right, at worst, it's going to be 2nd and 6. Here's the play call for that. If I get a 1st down off of it, here's the next play call. So Mike McCarthy, because of the way that Dak is operating, is very much so being able to stay ahead of what the defense is expecting, because he has belief and trust that Dak is operating it in the way that he wants to.
And what I saw in that game was, first of all, they were always ahead of the sticks. They were never behind on the sticks. Dak knew where he wanted to go all the time, the whole game. There was only one instance where he kind of hitched. He held it, and that was the potential pick 6 by Sauce Gardner. Yep. Other than that, like, Dak just knew exactly where he wanted to go. Like, that's when you use the word efficient. Efficient is, to me, staying ahead of the stick, staying ahead of the down and distance. Like, they were constantly doing that against this Jet defense. And one last thing, Dak was getting the ball out of his hands so quickly against that Jets defense. Yep. They had, like, no chance of getting him.
You know what the funniest part of all this is to me? And you'll appreciate this. It's 2023. Offensive football, and certainly the Cowboys right now, it feels like it's 2001. That was the big thing when I came into the league, was you got to be efficient on offense because of 2 high safeties, and you got to get the ball out, and you got to get out of your hands to allow. We're very much so going back 20 years to what it used to be.
It couldn't feel better than it feels right now in Dallas, Kmart. Does the league think it's real?
Yes. No. Yes, because I don't think, when you ask, does the league think it's real? NFL people don't react to things like fans and media. Mm-hmm. People in the NFL understand that Dak's a good quarterback. I think if you are being objective, you cannot look at what Dallas is doing and look at Dak in particular and not say, this team might actually have it now. Mm-hmm. You can't, if you are being completely objective, you can't, like, I think people, yes, it is a small sample size, but from all the questions we had about the Cowboys and how much Dak was talked about, he looks great.
Well, the biggest thing is it's sustainable. Like, what Dallas is doing, it's sustainable. Their defense is outstanding, and their offense is, like, complementing, like, what they're doing defensively.
I think also for Mike McCarthy, it's understanding what your opposing defensive coordinator is going to do and anticipating. And I go back to the first game of the year when they had a bunch formation to the left side of the field, and you understand what Wheat Martindale is going to do, and you run that 3-man wheel, right? And CeeDee Lamb gets wide open. It's Mike McCarthy understanding and being ahead of everything, what the defense is going to do and anticipating that too.